Before Marvel Studios was creating entire universes, there were a bunch of Marvel movies that were disconnected, mostly because in the early 2000s, Marvel was in dire financial straits, thanks to the comic book industry bubble popping in the 90s. Marvel had even filed for bankruptcy in 1996, but the company Toy Biz, who had been making action figures of Marvel characters, bought Marvel and started a whole new era of the company, and in the process sold many character rights to whoever would buy them. Spider-Man to Sony, X-Men to Fox, Hulk to Universal, etc. Obviously, in hindsight, these decisions led to a fractured and kind of incomplete MCU, though these characters being limited or not present at all has been worked into the story, which I do think is pretty interesting. It's a reflection of how the real world can affect these fantastical stories. What's good, internet? Jake here, dumb as ever, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Marvel movies that came out before the MCU, and their corresponding toy lines, because a bunch of these movies had really interesting and cool toy lines that you probably only vaguely remember. To be clear, this is a compilation of my 3 previous videos on the topic mixed into one big video. I do have new content on the way, but it's a bigger project and I need some more time to do it, so I hope you can enjoy or re-enjoy this video. And if you enjoy it, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps me with a villain more powerful than even Doctor Doom himself, Algae Rhythm. Blade is a 1998 movie based on the half-vampire Vampire Hunter that was directed by Stephen Norrington, starring Wesley Snipes as the titular Blade. I have to admit, I hadn't seen this movie until last month when I watched it on Discord with my YouTube members and patrons, but in my defense it did come out only 2 years after I was born, and I gotta say, it is not a kid's movie. There are some crazy scenes in this film, and they're awesome, but I wouldn't show it to a child. The movie surprised me a lot because of how fun it is. I was expecting a more serious movie, but Blade is hilarious and the vampire actors are all amping it up to 11. In the movie, Blade works with his mentor Whistler to stop Deacon Frost, a vampire that's trying to take over the world by summoning a blood god. I absolutely love the intro scene that takes place at a vampire club where they use blood sprinklers and are raving. I don't know, I just kind of dig vampires who love to party. Of course, Blade shows up and it's amazing. Such a cool character intro, and the scene tells you most of what you need to know about Blade. He's badass, funny, and loves to kill vampires. Oh, and fun fact, an alternate ending of the movie featured Morbius. This scene shows Blade and Karen talking about what they will do next, and Karen notices a mysterious figure watching them from a nearby rooftop. Apparently, that was Morbius, and he was going to be the villain of Blade 2. But when Guillermo del Toro took over as director, that idea changed. A damn shame. Blade 2 could have made $1 more billion with that one. I definitely need to go back and watch Blade 2 and 3 now, but like I said, Blade is not a kid's movie, so it didn't really have a big toy line to support it. But the movie did have 4 action figures released, under the Marvel Collector's Edition line, indicating the toys were more aimed towards adult collectors than kids. The line featured 2 Blade figures, one sporting his iconic look with the trench coat and shades that comes with a ton of his weapons from the movie, and the second version of Blade is called Vampire Blade. He looks a bit more feral here and doesn't have his trench coat. They gave him some red highlights on his bulletproof vest, which is different than the movie, but I kinda like it. There was also a Whistler figure, and he just looks a bit off to me. His head looks too small, and the skin color of his arms and body don't seem to match. And finally, there was a Deacon Frost action figure, which came with an alternate blood god mask and arm, which are remnants from an earlier version of the film, where Deacon becomes this giant blood tornado when he bonds with La Magra, but the effects look so terrible, they actually filmed the other ending that we got in the movie, which I did think was a bit anticlimactic. They hype up La Magra the whole movie, but when they summon him, Deacon really isn't that much stronger. I was expecting a transformation like the original ending, but I think they made the right choice by changing the final fight. The Frost figure is just okay. The La Magra mask looks like it's from Spirit Halloween though. This is a fine little toy line for the movie, though I think only the normal Blade action figure would be an actually good addition to your collection. Blade is in a weird spot in the MCU. They announced a movie in 2019 starring Mahershala Ali, but have hired and fired like 5 different directors. Somehow Wesley Snipes' Blade made it into the MCU first, though I guess you can hear Mahershala's Blade speak in the Eternals post-credit scene, which absolutely does not count in my mind. Werewolf by Night was so good that it's clear a horror-themed MCU movie like Blade would be sick. Just make the damn thing, Marvel. Man, I love the first X-Men movie. It was probably my introduction to the concept of X-Men, and I love the cool leather suits and, of course, Wolverine, played by Hugh Jackman before he was ultra ripped. Strangely, besides the movies, I never really got too much into X-Men. I read the first volume of Ultimate X-Men like 50 times because it's all I had, and I watched the X-Men Evolution cartoon, but I never got that deep into the comic lore, which seems extremely confusing to me. The movie that came out in 2000 was so good though. It was before CGI was used for absolutely everything, so there's a lot of practical effects used with the CGI, which just makes it a little bit more enjoyable to watch for me, because I love that stuff. In the first movie, Magneto kidnaps Rogue to use her as a power source for a machine that can turn humans into mutants, but the resulting mutations would likely kill most humans rather than give them powers, so the X-Men have to save Rogue and stop the Brotherhood of Mutants. The final battle takes place on the Statue of Liberty, and I'm sorry No Way Home, but X-Men did it better. This movie was a massive success, making 3 times a $75 million budget at the box office, and really kicked off the era of superhero movies we still live in today. This movie was so much more accessible to kids and had a big cast of heroes and villains, so there was a big toy line push by Toy Biz, with a ton of figures released. And I have to say, this is genuinely one of the most bizarre toy lines I've ever seen. And I don't think Toy Biz was attempting to make weird toys, but they did. They really did. There were 2 series of figures in the X-Men toy line. The first series featured pretty much every character in the movie. Let's start with the face of the franchise, Wolverine. Something is deeply wrong with the face of this franchise. I don't know why, but literally every Wolverine figure in this line has a weird expression. The face sculpts are just off. I genuinely cannot tell what this expression is meant to be. Is he angry? Is he happy? This Logan figure is posed so strangely. His legs are super splayed out, and his popping claws action feature makes it so his arms are impossible to pose. These toys came out shortly before the era of highly posable figures being the standard, so the lack of articulation isn't shocking. It's just the weird posing choices that get me. The Wolverine in his X-Men costume looks a bit better, but his face is still weird. Also, his claws are a soft rubber, so they end up very bendy looking. This isn't a problem unique to the X-Men movie toy though. It's kinda hard to do an action figure of Wolverine with his claws, because they can't be too sharp or hard, since kids might poke out their eyes or whatever. I like that they gave him orange and blue highlights on his costume. The actual movie just uses orange, but this would have looked way better to me. Cyclops fared better than most. His eyes light up, which is kind of the perfect Cyclops gimmick to me. He also comes with this wild accessory of Jean Grey trapped in Toad's goo, which is a crazy sentence saying it out loud. That sounded so weird. You can press a button on her back to release her from the goo. The figure of Jean has way more booba showing than the movie, and the box shows her with way more booba, which is actually a weird problem of this line. There were multiple releases of both Jean Grey and Storm, because the Toy Biz guys were weirdly horny when they made this toy line. They released 2 versions of Jean Grey. The first had no bra, so she had crazy booba showing, and the second gave her a bra to add a bit of modesty to the figure. Storm ended up with 3 different versions, the same as Jean Grey with the braless and bra version, but they also released a 3rd version that actually had her costume properly zipped up. I don't know what possessed Toy Biz to sculpt them with so much booba showing. In the movie, they never have their costumes unzipped like that, so it kinda feels like a creepy choice, especially considering these toys are based on real people. Jean Grey's figure also came with probably the most bizarre accessory in the line, a Senator Kelly figure. In the movie, Senator Kelly is an anti-mutant senator that is kidnapped by Magneto and forcibly mutated. The mutation doesn't take, and Senator Kelly turns into this gross water monster that horrifically dies. And Toy Biz decided to make a toy version of that for some reason. This gross slug dude is made of rubber and filled with metal balls. His face is crazy. He looks like Donald Trump with kawaii anime eyes. I really cannot wrap my head around this figure existing. I swear the Toy Biz guys were smoking crack when they developed this line. We also have the Mystique figure, which looks fine, a decent sculpt of the character. She does come with the skin of Wolverine though. Yeah, she comes with a rubber Wolverine suit to put on, which is honestly a cool concept, though a bit bizarre in practice. Mystique is posed in a very feminine way, so when the Wolverine skin is on, he looks a bit zesty. I kinda love that for him. Also, Wolverine's face sculpt is terrible even on this figure. There have been a lot of figures in this line, but the last one I wanted to highlight is Professor X, who is honestly one of the strongest figures in the line in terms of sculpting and look, but for some reason they made it so you literally cannot stand the figure up. The toy was purposely designed with loose legs so he can't stand up, which I really don't understand. Like, yes, he's paralyzed in the movie, but that doesn't mean you have to make the toy version paralyzed. It almost feels like he wasn't originally supposed to be removable from the wheelchair, so they didn't bother giving him tight leg joints. There are actually some playsets for this line. They did a Statue of Liberty head like the end of the movie. The sculpt is close enough to the actual statue, I guess. I find it funny how they put a giant Statue of Liberty sign at the front of the playset. Like, yeah man, I know. There was also a playset of Magneto's mutant machine, which was located in Lady Liberty's torch in the movie, so you could have a solid Lady Liberty setup for your collection. This toy line was hella weird, but starting with X2, they really improved the toys. I'm not gonna talk about all the X-Men movie toy lines here, but if you want another video covering the rest, let me know. Marvel has been slowly teasing out the X-Men in the MCU for a while, and it seems like they're making their big debut in Doomsday. Once the universe is reset or whatever after Secret Wars, I hope we get a unique take on the X-Men and not just the same actors as 20 years ago.
Hey, I just wanted to pop in and say this video is sponsored by GamerSups. GamerSups is an energy drink mix that gives you the caffeine you need for the day, without all the drawbacks of soda or energy drinks. I really like it and recommend it, and if you use my code dumbjake at checkout, you'll get 10% off your order, and I'll get a little kickback. A win-win. Okay, ad over. Unfortunately, I have not seen Blade 2 yet, but the clips alone show the obvious influence of the new director Guillermo del Toro, especially these ninja vampires. It really feels like they jumped over from a Hellboy movie to Blade. Based on the comments of the last video, it seems like people think Blade 2 is peak and Blade Trinity is Garbo. Many people said don't bother watching Trinity, but unfortunately I am the type of person that has to watch a movie other people say is bad. It's a deep character flaw, what can I say? While the first Blade movie had a modest line of 4 action figures, Blade 2 only had 2 figures, one of which was included in Toy Biz's Marvel Legends line. For anyone out of the loop, before 2007 the company Toy Biz held the Marvel toy license, and created the iconic Marvel Legends line that Hasbro still makes today. Though let me be the first to tell you that Toy Biz Marvel Legends and Hasbro Marvel Legends are 2 entirely different beasts. Toy Biz gave you a lot with your toys back in the day, and Blade here is a great example of that. In just one package, you get a highly articulated version of Blade that has a cloth goods leather jacket, which is awesome. Cloth goods for action figures is a rarity for the industry, and nowadays it's always a surprise to see, though it was a bit more common on Toy Biz figures. And man, look at that detail. They even cut a hole in the back of the jacket for Blade's sword, just like in the movie. Not only do you get a badass Blade figure with a sick faux leather jacket, but Toy Biz also gave you a full motorcycle to go with him. Yeah, just a full-on extra vehicle that looks badass. Hasbro makes excellent toys, but man, it's hard to beat the value you were getting with the Toy Biz Marvel Legends. Also, every Marvel Legends figure back then came with an included comic, which is awesome, but the included Blade 2 comic is just like a weird magazine with pictures of Blade from the movie. There was also a 12-inch Blade 2 figure, which was a part of the Marvel Studios Collector's Edition line, again by Toy Biz. These toys were 12-inch superposable figures that featured cloth goods for their clothing, putting them in line with toys like the classic G.I. Joe action figures. Blade of course looks amazing, I love his jacket, and it looks like Toy Biz gave the jacket a wire so you can pose it dynamically. Even though Blade 2 only had 2 figures, they're both kind of amazing, and definite upgrades to the first Blade movie's toy line. The 2002 Spider-Man movie is so important to me. It's easily the film that got me obsessed with the character, and paired with the original Ultimate Spider-Man comic book, I became a lifelong fan. The entire movie feels so bizarre for a summer blockbuster in retrospect. The director Sam Raimi was mainly known for the Evil Dead series of comedy horror movies, and Tobey Maguire doesn't seem like he would be the leading man of a superhero film. But ultimately, they were the perfect picks for this movie. Raimi's kinetic editing
editing choices fit the comic book action, and Tobey's dorkiness fit the character of Peter Parker like a glove. Not only being funny and awkward, but relatable. The Spider-Man costume was redesigned just enough to give it a tactile look and feel. The raised webbing and reflective eyes really make use of the fact that Spider-Man is a real person in a 3D world, as opposed to his 2D comic book origins. But it also really keeps close to Spidey's original costume and doesn't try to reinvent it. Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin is another incredible choice. His ability to shift between personalities is so amazing, and I personally really like his costume in the movie. It gets knocked a lot for looking like a Power Ranger, but Power Rangers is based on Super Sentai, and Super Sentai kicks ass. So why would that be a bad thing exactly? I also love how you can see Dafoe's eyes and mouth through the mask, and the final fight with Green Goblin's death was pure cinema. This movie is probably not only my favorite Spider-Man movie, but my favorite superhero movie full stop. The accompanying toy line was produced by Toy Biz, who made all the Marvel toys before Hasbro took over in 2007. We have a fair amount of toys to cover with these movies, so let's hop right in with Series 1 of the Spider-Man movie Toy Biz line, starting with Superposable Spider-Man. Back in the day, before being highly posable was the standard for action figures, it was sometimes considered a gimmick, hence the name Superposable Spider-Man. At the time, this thing was a mini masterpiece. The sculpting and paint were just fantastic, and the gargoyle head he comes with is a nice set piece. There was also Battle Ravaged Spider-Man, representing his final battle look with the ripped mask, which is an excellent sculpt, and he has little rips all over his suit, really showing off the brutality of that fight. Of course, to go along with Spider-Man, we also got Superposable Green Goblin. This is actually a toy I had as a kid. I love that they gave Green Goblin the superposable treatment, so he can go toe-to-toe with Spider-Man just like the movie. He also comes with his glider, which has the most amazing texturing on it, and it could bend and move just like the one in the movie. The Goblin also has a removable mask with a very questionable Willem Dafoe head sculpt beneath it. There was also a toy of Norman Osborn with his iconic chair, which had electronics to make it seem like the Goblin mask is talking to Osborn. The face sculpt on the figure is much better and looks a lot like Dafoe. The chair is sculpted well, I guess. I don't know, I just think it's funny that for a blockbuster movie toy line, Guy and his chair is one of the first figures Toy Biz put out. Of course, they also released the much better counterpart, Guy with his desk and chair, with the J. Jonah Jameson, who has desk slamming action. Again, kind of humorous, but this is actually an amazing idea for a J. Jonah Jameson toy. Series 2 brought more Spider-Man figures. Leaping Spider-Man has way less articulation than the previous toys, and comes with this dumpster that lets him jump over it. Web-swinging Spider-Man comes with a lamppost to swing from, and it seems to have the exact same articulation as Superposable Spidey, so if you can't find that one, you can just buy this set to get him. There was also a second Green Goblin that could shoot pumpkin bomb missiles, and has a lot less articulation than the first version. We also got a Peter Parker figure that comes with a bookshelf like that one scene in the movie. The face sculpt is really strong. You can definitely see the likeness to Tobey Maguire. I do think it's funny that the only civilian Peter Parker toy is doing the most obvious Spider-Man pose. There's also a figure of MJ representing her look in the parade fight scene. She even comes with a balcony that can break off and make her fall as a gimmick. The face sculpt is once again strong. Besides the one Goblin figure, Toy Biz was cooking with the head sculpts, which I have to give them credit for because this was pre-face scanning technology, so every face sculpt was a gamble. Series 3 only had 3 figures, the first being Power Punch Spider-Man, who came with a removable Spidey mask and zipline thingy. There was also Battle Ravaged Green Goblin to go with the earlier Spider-Man. This is just a repaint of the superposable Green Gobbo to make him look dirtier, though this version featured a new head that had light piping, meaning if a source of light was put behind the Goblin's head, it would look like his eyes were glowing. Unfortunately, this version comes with a ruined window diorama instead of his glider. Finally, there was Wrestler Spider-Man, a somewhat bizarre toy that featured a Peter Parker in his human spider wrestling costume. You could remove the rubbery shirt, pants, and mask, along with swapping his arms and legs, so you could turn the human spider into Spider-Man. Both the Spider-Man and human spider masks are rubbery and very susceptible to tearing. Honestly, I would not mess with this toy in the modern day. I'm sure time has done a number on the rubbery clothes this toy uses. There were also 12-inch collector series that featured Spider-Man, Green Goblin, and Mary Jane. These tall figures had cloth goods clothing, and the Green Goblin and Spider-Man had removable masks. Though unfortunately Gobby doesn't have his glider, Spider. Of course, I have to shout out the movie Web Blaster. I personally never had a Web Blaster because my mom did not like messy toys like silly string or goo, though they looked so cool to me as a kid, and I for sure wanted one. The movie Web Blaster tries to hide the can of fluid because in the movie, Spider-Man's webs are organic, but you just end up looking like you're Spider-Man with arm tumors. There's actually a video I really like that details the history of the Spider-Man Web Blasters by the Daft Brothers, so check that out if you're super into Web Blasters. One last thing I wanted to mention is this VR headset toy. It's called the VR 3D True Color Reality System by MGA Entertainment. I had this as a kid and I played the game on the VR headset like a max of 3 times I think, but just looking at the toy and remembering the game is deeply nostalgic to me. Though I can't really remember the game that well, I mostly remember it being all black and red like the Virtual Boy, and there were like 3 or 4 lanes to swing in with Green Goblin on the opposite side. There doesn't seem to be anything online about the actual game itself, so this drawing is how I remember the game, drawn to the best of my limited ability. The 2002 Spider-Man movie will forever be my GOAT and carry some strong, nostalgic memories for me. Daredevil, starring Ben Affleck, is an insanely fun movie to watch drunk with your homies. The movie is such a trip, especially when the Daredevil action really starts. While the movie is fun to watch, it's hard to say it's a good Daredevil movie, mainly because in one of the scenes, Matt Murdock loses a court case against a criminal, and then hunts the guy down and straight up murders him. Look, I'm not the biggest Daredevil head in the world, but isn't the fact that he believes in justice via the court system one of his biggest character traits? In the movie, he kills a bunch of people, but then decides not to kill the Kingpin, played by the late great Michael Clarke Duncan, as a way to prove he's better than the villains, which has to be one of the worst tropes from superhero movies, and is a trope the first Deadpool movie made fun of, which I thought was really funny. Of course, Bullseye is a fantastic villain, and if they got one thing right, it's how much of an insane hater Bullseye is. In the way of toys, we have another Toy Biz Marvel Legends figure, though this one is visibly worse than Blade in terms of posability. They didn't even give him shoulder hinges. It's really strange. The sculpting looks fine, but not great. I'm not sure what's up with this figure. It looks more like a knockoff version of a Marvel Legend toy to me. Though he did come with a stained glass church window display that you can mount on your wall, which is a really fun way to display your toys. Daredevil also got a 12-inch action figure in the Marvel Studios Collector's Edition line. This figure looks good for sure, and is more accurate than the Marvel Legends figure, but I think the jacket is a little too big on the figure, leading it to look a bit lumpy. I don't think it looks terrible, but Daredevil's costume is basically skin tight in the movie, so this version just looks a bit off to me. Daredevil in the MCU has been thriving. I'm really glad they brought him back. In fact, the Netflix Daredevil show actually got 3 Marvel Legends based on it: Elektra, the Punisher, and of course Daredevil himself. I don't really remember Netflix Elektra to be honest, and her toy looks kind of plain. The Daredevil figure was awesome though. I really dig his original suit that had a lot more black in it. I really enjoyed when he popped up in She-Hulk as his first official MCU appearance, and I really need to watch Born Again because I've heard great things about it. Hasbro is putting out a new Marvel Legends Daredevil based on Born Again, and it looks just as good, if not better, than their first attempt. I'm begging for Daredevil to be in the next Spider-Man movie. They're so cool together, it would be amazing. X2 is a beloved superhero movie for many great reasons. It expands on the groundwork the first movie laid out and introduces interesting new characters and ideas. In the movie, the X-Men have to face off against William Stryker, a military scientist who is trying to use his mutant son who can control minds, and Cerebro to kill every mutant on the planet. I really like how this movie built upon Wolverine's story and introduced more mutants like Colossus and Pyro. The movie also features my favorite fight in the trilogy between Wolverine and Lady Deathstrike, a mutant who has the same powers as Wolverine, at least in the movie. She has Logan on the ropes, but he manages to kill her by pumping her body full of molten adamantium. The worst part is she was being mind controlled, and it seems to wear off the second before she dies, and Logan is visibly upset by killing her. This scene is always stuck in my mind for some reason. Just like the first X-Men movie, Toy Biz produced the toy line for X2, and this time they locked in.
While the first toy line was super weird with bad sculpting and ridiculous accessories, the X2 toy line features impeccable sculpts of the characters, cool set piece accessories, and incredible articulation. The Wolverine figures this time around are excellent. I really like this one in his jacket. I always felt like the jacket look was almost an alternate costume for him. There's also his actual costume look, which has much stronger highlights than the first toy. This Wolverine's face looks a bit off to me, but it's leagues better than the first one we looked at. Cyclops got 2 new figures. Optic Blast Cyclops comes with this large turret that fires missiles. Man, remember when every toy had a weapon that fired missiles? Did y'all play with the missile launching gimmicks a lot? Comment down below. I'm curious because I didn't ever really shoot the missiles because I would lose them so fast. Anyway, this Cyclops looks great, and there's a second version wearing a trench coat. I swear, so many of these movies have characters in trench coats. I'm assuming it's because of the Matrix, but we of course have to give props to Blade for doing it first. Magneto also got a new toy. He looks great, and I love this big metal door he comes with. You can use a magnet in Magneto's foot to make the door open. Toy Biz just like to give you set dressing for your collection, and I think that's really cool. We only got toys for 2 new characters in this line, Iceman and Nightcrawler. I love how they designed Iceman's suit with the tribal tattoo style symbols. I would never get a tribal tattoo, but for some reason I love when characters have them. They're very 2000s coded, so I'm probably just nostalgic about tribal tattoos, as weird as that is. Nightcrawler is hands down the best figure in the line. The sculpting is incredible, the posability is off the charts, and they gave him a bendy wire in his tail. There's so much wonderful attention to detail, like the little reflective dots all over his jacket. I had the toy when I was younger, and I always thought the dots were meant to be rain droplets, but they're actually permanently on Nightcrawler's jacket in the movie. I'm not sure what the dots are supposed to be, just a design element, I suppose. Something I forgot to mention when talking about the first X-Men toy line is that there was a toy of the X-Jet. It seems like a fun enough toy, and they made another one for X2. At first I thought the X2 version was a direct re-release of the first version, but the 2 toys are actually different. In fact, the X2 version looks a bit worse to me. It's a little stubby for a Blackbird anyway. My one complaint about this line is how few characters there are. We only get a few of the first movie's characters, and I would have loved to have gotten new versions of them since that first line was bad. And I also would have loved to see more new characters like Colossus, Pyro, and Lady Deathstrike. X2 is a fantastic movie and an even better sequel, and is probably going to sit alongside Spider-Man 2 in the Superhero Movie Hall of Fame forever.
Hulk was one of the first superheroes I really loved. He's a simple character to understand. He's a big dude that's a
Secondary color.
and when he get mad, he gets strong. What's not to love? I swear in the early 2000s, the 3 biggest Marvel heroes were Wolverine, Spider-Man, and Hulk. And nowadays, Hulk has been heavily relegated to the sidelines, which kinda sucks because I think a full-on Planet Hulk movie or something would be sick. The 2003 Hulk movie, directed by Ong Lee, is a pretty bizarre movie when you compare it to the rest of the films in this lineup. While X-Men and Fantastic Four were action-adventure films, Hulk is almost like an action drama. The movie deals with some pretty heavy stuff like child abuse and repressed trauma. In the movie, Bruce Banner's dad loses his mind and experiments on Bruce as a kid. His dad has a major crash out, activates a gamma bomb, and kills his wife, and is about to kill his own son before he's caught. As an adult, Bruce comes into contact with a heavy dose of gamma radiation, and whatever his dad did to him activates, creating the Hulk. The movie is ultimately about how Bruce must overcome his father's abuse, culminating in a fight between the two, which feels really mature and interesting for a movie about the Hulk. Hulk is a really strange movie that I low-key like. It has some insane editing choices to simulate comic book panels, and the CGI sometimes looks amazing, and other times looks like it's from 2003, which it is. There was, of course, a toy line for the movie by Toy Biz. This line featured so many variations of the Hulk. There were 13 figures released over 4 waves, and 10 of those figures were the Hulk. Any toy line about a specific superhero is going to have multiple versions, of course, but damn, 10 Hulks? There's not a ton of difference between them besides features and accessories either. So maybe the Hulks were just flying off the shelf, and Toy Biz needed to keep the supply to match the demand. Out of the 3 non-Hulk toys, there is Bruce Banner, who comes with this pod that shows Hulk inside. head. It's called a transformation chamber. I get the idea of the toy, but I don't think this actually happens in the movie. I could be wrong. And the Bruce Banner toy does not really look like Eric Bana. Then there's the Hulk dog, which is probably the best scene in the movie, where Hulk is attacked by 3 giant gamma irradiated dogs. The scene is cool, but also surprisingly violent. I don't know, even if they're CGI monster dogs, I didn't really like seeing them get killed, but it was funny when one of the dogs bit Hulk in the balls. Only one of the Hulk dogs got a toy, and he's really cool. The sculpting is amazing, and if you squeeze his legs, the dog's jaw opens and closes. Finally, there's a toy of Hulk's dad, David Banner. David is basically the Marvel character Absorbing Man in the movie, though he's never called that in the film or marketing material. This toy, while looking awesome, is also based on nothing. David takes many forms in the movie, but never anything like this. I guess it's nice they made him at all, and if he did look like this in the movie, it would have been a cool Absorbing Man design. There were also these giant 13-inch Hulks that I remember really wanting as a kid. I don't usually care for large figures like that, but Hulk is an exception. And of course, we've got to shout out the Hulk hands. Sadly, I never had any or knew anyone that had any, so please comment down below. Did it hurt to get punched by them? I've always wondered. I know Red Hulk just appeared in Captain America 4, but to be honest, that's the first MCU movie I've missed in a while. Not for any big reason, I just wasn't super interested based on the trailers, and I had a new dog at the time, so it was harder to leave the house for 2 hours. I just wish we could get another proper Hulk movie, and not these half Hulk projects like Thor Ragnarok and Captain America. The Punisher is an interesting Marvel character to me, because it almost feels like he lives in a whole different world from other Marvel characters, even though his first appearance was in a Spider-Man comic book. This section is about the 2004 movie, but there was actually an earlier Punisher film that was released in 1989. This version of the Punisher is played by Dolph Lundgren, and while it doesn't seem to play super close to the comic book, it's kinda hard to mess up the Punisher in my opinion. He's a guy with a dead family that kills bad guys. It's a pretty simple story to tell, though the Dolph Lundgren Punisher didn't have his iconic skull shirt. The 2004 movie is a childhood classic, though I only ever watched it on FX. Remember FX? FX has the movies? Maybe I'm just old. The Punisher is a fun movie because it's so simple, and Thomas Jane, the actor who plays Frank Castle, really brings a lot to the character, and I totally believe in his mission. And that makes sense as Thomas Jane got really into reading the Punisher comic books for the role, and actually became a fan of the character. The best scene in the movie has to be the fight with the Russian. I just love how long the fight goes on for, and it's a really funny fight as well. This Where's Waldo MFer destroying Frank's gun will never not be funny to me. Like Blade and Daredevil, the Punisher only got 2 toys in total from Toy Biz, one of which being a Marvel Legends figure. This figure comes with a bunch of weapons, and the Punisher has a cloth goods faux leather jacket. The jacket has little details that makes it stand out specifically as the Punisher's jacket, which is really nice. And I like that the figure comes with the Amazing Spider-Man 129, which features the Punisher's first appearance in Marvel Comics. There was also a Marvel Studios Collector's Edition figure, which is a 12-inch action figure with cloth goods. Like the other figures we've talked about, it looks great. In the MCU, we of course have Jon Bernthal as the Punisher now. And man, what a great version of Frank Castle. I really loved his story arc in the first half of Daredevil Season 2. And I'm glad he's back in Born Again. This version of Punisher actually did get a toy in Hasbro's Marvel Legends line, and he was awesome back then, though the face sculpt is a little loose, but luckily they recently announced a new figure of the Punisher based on Daredevil Born Again. This figure's face sculpt is pretty much perfect thanks to modern day face scanning tech, and I love the faded look of the skull on his chest. Spider-Man 2 is one of those legendary superhero movies that everyone agrees is amazing. The first movie was perfectly expanded on, and really emphasized Peter's struggle to live a normal life while being Spider-Man. Dr. Octopus was a brilliant choice for the villain, and honestly, if you read the comics, there's an argument to be made that Doc Ock is Spider-Man's arch enemy over the Green Goblin. They made Doc Ock way cooler in this movie, especially his tentacles, which are more than a match for Spider-Man, and they let
let Ock fight Spidey on the sides of buildings and on moving trains. I also love how Octavius is a sympathetic villain in this movie, while also being super evil and fun. There are so many iconic scenes in this movie, like the bank robbery or the train fight, and Sam Raimi even added elements of his Evil Dead movies with the surgery scene, which felt crazy to watch as a kid, by the way. One part of the movie I really disliked as a kid is when Peter loses his powers. It's obviously a good storyline for the movie and adds to the drama, but my kid brain was not happy about it, man. I wanted Spidey and Doc Ock fighting for 2 hours straight. Anyway, Toy Biz also did the Spider-Man 2 line of figures, and they rolled out this line in a very similar way to the first movie's toy line. Though this time around they went hard on specifically Spider-Man action figures. Series 1 and 2 of the toy line consists of 8 Spider-Man figures with different accessories. Most of them were already very posable, though there was another super posable Spider-Man in this line that came with a very small billboard to chill on. This Spider-Man's fingers were articulated, which is pretty crazy even today. Most toy companies go with the alternate hands route, and the fact that you can make a web shooting hand without swapping his hands is awesome. Doc Ock somehow got his first toy in Series 3 with the Tentacle Attack Action Doc Ock, which had a little lever to make his arms move. In Series 3 there was also Battle Attack Spider-Man, another Spidey toy, but he comes with a Doc Ock accessory that makes it look like Ock is attacking with a brick wall behind him. There was also Spin and Kick Spider-Man that came with a train door that has the tentacles popping out to attack. Series 4 is easily the best set of toys. There is another superposable Spider-Man release, as well as Spider-Sense Spider-Man that comes with a brick wall accessory that again has tentacles to fight. Finally, there's Scooter Spider-Man that comes with his pizza delivery scooter. This is such a fun toy, the scooter is awesome, and Spidey comes with a swappable Peter Parker head. The final toy of the line is Doc Ock with 4 bendable tentacles. This figure is peak. I love that the arms can bend, and the sculpt of the Good Doctor looks great. So out of 16 figures, 14 of them were Spider-Man. Not even special suits, just straight up the same Spider-Man design for every figure. And there wasn't even a battle damage version. There were some other fun items, like the store and play carry case that can hold your 1 Doc Ock and like 7 Spider-Mans. And I really like this train battle playset. It comes with a 4-inch Spider-Man figure and a train car that can open up into a battle scene between Spidey and Doc Ock's tentacles. Spider-Man has magnets on his arms and feet so he can attach to metal pieces of the playset. The 12-inch collector line from the first movie returned with 2 packs. One set features Spider-Man and Doc Ock. Doc Ock looks amazing, the tentacles are beautifully sculpted at this scale, and the other pack has Spidey and Mary Jane in her wedding dress. Though in terms of big Spider-Man toys, the 18-inch Amazing Spider-Man has got to be the best big Spidey, with an incredible 67 points of articulation. That's more articulated than I am. There was of course a new Web Blaster as well. The triple action Web Blaster has 3 modes: silly string, water, and missiles. I think it's nice that they give you options. And one more role-playing toy that caught my eye was the Doc Ock arm, which seems to work like one of those grabby hand sticks. Also, does anyone remember the Spider-Man 2 plug-and-play TV game where you had to punch and kick with these arms and ankle bands to fight? I never had it, but I saw the commercial all the time and wanted it so bad. Though looking at gameplay, it doesn't look very good. Spider-Man 2 is a legendary movie, and while the toy line's vision was very focused on Spidey himself, it's still a great and nostalgic selection of toys. Every 10 years, Hollywood takes a stab at the Fantastic Four. Last decade's attempt went pretty poorly, but man, the new MCU version looks amazing to me. They're doing a lore-accurate Galactus, my boy Pedro Pascal is freaking Mr. Fantastic, and oh my god, they cooked with the thing. He looks perfect. As good as the new movie looks, I honestly think the original 2005 movie is absolutely fantastic. Wait a minute. Like most of these movies, the first Fantastic Four movie is an origin story, and was my introduction to Marvel's first family. I think it does a great job of adapting the comics, especially with The Thing. The tragedy of that character is super well told in the movie, and I absolutely love the practical makeup they used for him, even if it makes him not perfectly comic accurate. It's also so weird to see Chris Evans play another Marvel character. He's a little bit too much of a douchebag in my opinion, but I get why they wrote him that
that way. I really love Mr. Fantastic in the movie. He looks just like the comic book character to me, and the stretching powers actually look really good. Invisible Woman looks the part, but they barely gave her anything to do in the movie. And I don't like the gag of her having to get undressed in public while invisible. It just feels a little gross. Sue Storm is a goat, so I just expect a little more respect for her, which I'm sure the new movie is going to strive to do. The toy line for this movie is absolutely incredible. Modern articulation was finally the standard, and almost every figure was super articulated, including the Invisible Woman. They gave her a double bend at her elbow, which has only recently become a thing in Hasbro's female Marvel figures. The Human Torch is clear orange plastic and looks great. Mr. Fantastic comes with the bendy attachments, and you can make him crazy looking. This toy is actually kind of a brilliant concept for the character, but because the limbs are bendable, they're made out of a soft plastic, meaning the connections between the stretchy limbs and the normal limbs is really bad, so he doesn't really stay together that well. Also, when he's fully stretched out, he looks like an analog horror version of Woody. And of course, the ever-loving thing looks great, with all the sculpted detail you would expect from Toy Biz, as well as a few Doctor Doom figures, one of which has a rotating face gimmick. Some other notable figures in the line is the Raging Thing, that comes with a whole separate bendy Mr. Fantastic figure to wrap around him like when they fight in the movie. There's also a snowboarding Human Torch figure, which is an interesting choice. I guess it's nice to have one not on fire Johnny figure. And there's also a really cool astronaut version of Ben Grimm that has a face switching gimmick. Fantastic Four aside, this is just a cool astronaut toy. Finally, my favorite weird figure in this line is the Spring Attack Mr. Fantastic, who has a slinky for an abdomen, which is a fun idea for a toy. They were really creative with this character, and the best part is he doesn't even look weird when he's not slinkying. They kind of cooked with this figure. Much like Hulk hands, they made Thing hands, which is awesome because you can do a Hulk versus the Thing fight. But they also made Thing feet? Whose freaky ass at Toy Biz made this decision? They're really out here sculpting Thing toes. And there was also a Mr. Fantastic arm claw grabber thing, which is, again, a great idea. I gotta say, this is the best toy line so far. There are some fun ideas, and they never fall into the cursed category. And all the figures are very posable. Like I said earlier, I can't wait for the new Fantastic Four movie, and I would really like to see the 2005 version of the team in Doomsday or Secret War. X-Men: The Last Stand is a movie that has a really bad reputation, or at least it did back in the day. I don't know about current day feelings. I remember it being the first superhero movie that I didn't really like that much, which was definitely a new feeling to me since I wasn't much of a critic at age 10. Though I will say, the first movie I actually hated as a kid was Happy Feet. I did not understand the message of that movie, and really hated when the Happy Feet penguin got captured. In retrospect, the movie is actually pretty decent and has some interesting cinematography and messages for a kid's movie, but my dumb kid brain just didn't like it that much. Where was I? Oh yeah, X-Men 3 was meh. I think the main reason I didn't like it as a kid is because Nightcrawler wasn't in it, which as a big X2 Nightcrawler fan was a huge disappointment. Apparently the actor who played Nightcrawler didn't like all the makeup, which is fair, but damn, just get a new guy then. I know my 10-year-old self would not have clocked that it was a different person. Anyway, the movie had issues. The Dark Phoenix storyline in the X-Men comics is one of the most beloved, and while I haven't read it, there's no way the movie follows the comic storyline. I also hated how they killed Cyclops so early in the movie, and while a lot of new mutants are introduced, many of them hardly get screen time, though I'm glad they finally got Shadowcat and the Juggernaut into the movie universe. And the Juggernaut chase scene is probably my favorite. I know people always make fun of the "I'm the Juggernaut bitch" line, but I thought it was funny as a kid, and to be honest, I still think it's funny as an adult. There was no actual toy line for X-Men 3. Toy Biz had the Marvel license when the movie came out in 2006, but didn't create a toy line for it. And a year later in 2007, Marvel sold the licensing to Hasbro. Obviously, without a movie in the theaters to promote it, Hasbro wasn't going to make an X3 toy line. So instead, they slipped different X3 characters into their Marvel Legends line, starting with X3 Beast in the Annihilus Build-A-Figure series. I love this look for Beast, and the toy does him justice. Next was X3 Jean Grey and X3 Juggernaut in the Blob Build-A-Figure series. This Jean Grey looks fine. I don't love her look in the movie, but this toy does look accurate at least. Back in the day, the Marvel Legends line used to do secret variant versions of figures. So there is a version of X3 Jean Grey that looks like her evil Phoenix self. The Juggernaut looks awesome. I know his look in the movie is not everyone's cup of tea, but I think his look fits the universe he's in for the most part. Though in terms of movie Juggernauts, the Deadpool 2 version is easily the GOAT. X3 Colossus was a part of the Queen Brood Build-A-Figure series. He looks excellent, and the texture on his skin just looks fun to touch, and I love the big X on his chest. I think it's neat that Hasbro bothered to do any X3 figures at all, and I think they chose a pretty good character selection for the figures they did make. In retrospect, X-Men The Last Stand probably isn't that bad of a movie, especially compared to some of the X-Men movies that came out later, but it was the first X-Men movie that let fans down, which unfortunately became a recurring theme in Fox's X-Men universe. Ghost Rider is just one of those superheroes that is designed to be badass. An agent of the devil that has a flaming skull for a head and rides a badass motorcycle. Yeah man, I'm there. And I was there in 2007 for Ghost Rider, a movie about Johnny Blaze, who signs his soul to the devil to stop his father's cancer, only for the devil to double-cross Johnny, getting his dad killed in a Daredevil stunt gone wrong. As an adult, the devil calls on Johnny to become the Ghost Rider and stop his son Blackheart from doing something evil. Man, I can't remember, and who cares? He's a douche in a trench coat. Way lamer than the actual Blackheart from the comics. This movie has not aged the best, or more accurately, it was bad when it came out, and I liked it because I was a kid, which I don't blame my younger self. If you saw a cowboy riding a horse that was on fire at age 12, your neurons would also activate. The Nick Cage of it all is also fun, though to be honest, his performance is a little bland in this movie. Unless it's a Ghost Rider transformation sequence, then he goes absolutely crazy. The toy line for Ghost Rider was actually done by Hasbro, because in January of 2007, Marvel Entertainment entered an agreement with Hasbro, giving them the Marvel Comics toy license instead of Toy Biz, which is kind of weird to me since Toy Biz was a part of Marvel Entertainment, but whatever. The difference between the quality of Toy Biz and Hasbro is immediately apparent. Where the Fantastic Four toys had very accurate sculpts and a bunch of accessories, the Ghost Rider toys feel very inaccurate and only have one or two really lame accessories. This Ghost Rider, for example, just seems off in terms of proportions, and Ghost Rider seems a little bit hunched over. The motorcycle looks cool though, and overall it doesn't look terrible, just worse than Toy Biz. There were 2 waves of basic figures, with 4 Ghost Riders released over the 2 waves. They all look fine, though a Ghost Rider without his bike feels incomplete to me. My favorite Ghost Rider is from Wave 2. He has a Nick Cage head and it just looks terrible. The head looks weirdly small and the likeness is just not there. The first wave also featured the GOAT, Caretaker. I always loved his design in the movie. I wish there was a set with Caretaker and his horse. In Wave 2 they released Blackheart, and just like the movie, he looks like a normal dude. Instead of making toys of Blackheart's lackeys, Hasbro opted to make some of the characters that appeared in the Ghost Rider tie-in video game. This will be a common strategy for Hasbro when it comes to these movie toy lines. Since usually there's only 1 or 2 villains in the actual movies, they'll often pull characters from the video games to put into the toy line, or just insert a comic book character into the line to pad it out. In Wave 1 we have Vengeance, who is like Ghost Rider's Venom, just a bigger, more powerful version of Ghost Rider. And in Wave 2 we got Scarecrow. Apparently Marvel also has a Scarecrow villain. This version is cool. He looks like a Spawn villain more than anything to me, and I like that you can remove his hat. And yeah, that's pretty much it for Ghost Rider. A bad movie I liked as a kid with a very mid toy line. Though I will say this is very early in Hasbro's Marvel days, and obviously nowadays they would make stuff that blows these toys out of the water. Spider-Man 3 has a lot of issues. There are 3 villains, all of which feel like they could have carried the movie on their own, but ultimately it feels like they all got half a story. The humor when Peter is affected by the symbiote is so bad. Like, so bad it's funny, which is maybe the point, and as a kid I think I thought it was funny, but as an adult, the most I can muster is an uncomfortable smile, and the entire restaurant sequence is just fully cringe-inducing to me. I really hate that Peter finally realizes he's lost exhaust himself when he hits Mary Jane. Like, I don't think it's a terrible idea, but for me personally, I really don't like seeing Spider-Man hitting his girlfriend, even under the effects of the symbiote. All that being said, I still like this movie. Sandman is pitch perfect, a great version of the character that got more depth just like Doc Ock did in Spider-Man 2. He easily could have carried the whole movie as the villain. Harry becoming the new Goblin was kind of predictable, and it felt like the last two movies were leading up to it, but then he gets sidelined hard, and the whole amnesia plot just seems silly. Though the scene where Peter calls him Goblin Jr. and blows up a pumpkin bomb in his face will never not be funny. The symbiote is interesting. I love the look they went with the all black and gray version of his costume. It looks so cool, and Venom, who was way too rushed in the movie, looks really cool to me as well. I love the crooked web lines all over his body, and even though he just makes dinosaur noises, I thought his head design was cool. I think a lot of people make fun of the way Venom is defeated, but to be honest, they just followed the comic book roots, and I can't hate that. It's not Sam Raimi's fault that Venom was given a lame weakness. Okay, as for the toy line, in early 2007, Hasbro took over as the premier maker of Marvel toys, so the Spider-Man 3 toy line is quite a bit different from the first two. The first big difference is the size. While Toy Biz made 6-inch action figures, Hasbro opted to do a basic line of 5-inch figures. The second big difference is the character selection. There is of course a bunch of different Spider-Man toys, red suit and black suit. Hasbro brought back the super posable branding as super articulated, though these new super articulated figures are nowhere near as posable as the Toy Biz super posable figures. There were several versions of each suit. One of the red suit toys was Armored for Battle Spider-Man, a version of the character sporting some pretty cool looking pieces of armor made out of web. The black suit also got a battle armor toy, as well as a version fighting Sandman, and a version based on Peter trying to escape the symbiote in the bell tower. Wrestler Spider-Man from the first movie toy line kind of makes a return as the quick change to Spider-Man Peter Parker, which features Spider-Man with suit pieces and a Peter Parker head. The suit is like a weird plastic mold that Spider-Man is placed into though, so he can't move at all with it on. Man, I love this packaging with the bending building and the blue color. It really pops to me. As for the villains, we have a couple of Sandman figures. I feel like Sandman is kind of a hard character to make a cool toy of. I don't think toys can really express his power that well, but these two are decent little action figures. New Goblin got 3 different figures, so they're all very similar. I actually had the New Goblin with the removable face mask as a kid, and I thought he was pretty cool. I like how his glider also works like a surfboard, but overall his look is pretty boring. It's all functionality and doesn't have the style his dad's costume did. Finally, we have Venom toys. The Venom toys are interesting because his head sculpt doesn't really match the movie. It looks more like Venom traditionally does with his giant mouth and long tongue. There is a piece of artwork for the movie that shows Venom looking like this, so the toys were probably based on concept art. The Capture Web Venom has a purple color to it that I absolutely love. Ever since I read Ultimate Spider-Man and played the game based on it, I love when Venom is purple. He just looks so cool to me. In addition to the movie characters, Hasbro also added a bunch of other characters to the line. We got new toys of the previous movie's villains, as well as toys based on characters from the video game, like the Lizard, who honestly looks awesome. Very comic book inspired, and I like how he comes with web accessories to bind his hands and muzzle him. There were 2 Scorpion figures. One of them was based on the Spider-Man 3 video game, and it looks sick. I love the look of the tail with the sickle at the end of it, and all the wires around his body make it look like he's using some kind of hydraulic version of Doc Ock's tentacles. His mask is a little dorky, but you can lift the visor, which is cool. I have no idea what the other Scorpion is based on. He might be inspired by the Scorpion from the first movie game, but they don't really look all that similar to me. There were also figures of Rhino, Mysterio, Black Cat, Kraven, and Vulture. Vulture looks amazing, and I love that he comes with a little Vulture accessory. Some of these toys did get re-releases with new paint apps as Walmart exclusives with this absolutely badass packaging. Seriously, some of the coolest packaging I've seen, and I remember just staring at these toys in the store as a kid. There was also the Ooze Attack collection, which featured action figures with an accessory you could use slime on. For example, this Spider-Man comes with the symbiote in its monstrous form from the movie. I actually had the symbiote mutation Venom. My mom did not allow me to play with slime or goo or anything, so I never actually used the accessory, which was this floor you could place Venom on so you could cover him in goo, like the scene where Eddie turns into Venom in the movie. I loved that Venom toy. It had this crazy flapping jaw and tongue thing going on. Some of the Ooze Attack sets sets feature Sandman ooze, and I always wondered if the Sandman ooze was grainy or something. These weren't the only Spider-Man 3 action figures though. The movie actually got a whole Marvel Legends wave dedicated to it, featuring all the usual suspects from the movie, plus Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and Mary Jane. What's interesting is MJ looks like she's based on the end of Spider-Man 2. She even has a plank of wood. Doc Ock and Green Goblin seem to be direct re-releases of their original Toy Biz figures, which seems a little lazy, but hey, I guess if it's not broke. The Spider-Man 3 wave featured a Sandman Build-A-Figure, and it's pretty much a statue and not even a big one. A cool piece, but I remember thinking it was kind of a lame Build-A-Figure at the time. That wasn't the only other action figure line though. There were also the Unleashed 360 figures, which I had never heard of until doing research for this video. Unleashed was a Hasbro-wide banner for many of their brands like Transformers, Star Wars, and Marvel. While Transformers and Star Wars only got statues in their Unleashed lines, Marvel got full-on action figures that were about 7 inches tall and had better sculpting and higher levels of posability. The Unleashed line didn't seem to last too long, and we only got one series each of Marvel Legends Unleashed and Spider-Man 3 Unleashed figures. But boy oh boy, they cooked on the Spider-Man 3 figures. These are without a doubt the coolest of the action figures you could get for the third movie. The line featured Spider-Man, Black Suit Spider-Man, Sandman, New Goblin, and Venom. And man, each of these is probably the best figure you could get of each character. They remind me more of the older Toy Biz figures when it comes to sculpting and paint, and the way they come with cool backdrop accessories. Venom looks absolutely amazing. He just looks like a nice toy to hold and feel, and the articulation goes crazy. Spidey's elbow and knee joints look similar to SH Figuarts engineering, which is wild for a Hasbro figure in 2007. These are the coolest Spider-Man 3 figures to me, though the line is really small and you only get the essentials. Geez, that was a lot of action figures to cover. And would you believe a year later Hasbro would release the Spider-Man Trilogy series of action figures, which was just a line of old toys from previous lines released under one banner. They even re-released Wrestler Spider-Man, which is kind of crazy to me and proves how solid Toy Biz was at making these movie Spider-Man toys. There was also a line of small figures called Web World. The main playset for Web World was the Final Battle playset, which features a giant Sandman attacking the under construction building, with the minifigures of Spider-Man, New Goblin, and Venom. There was also a line of little plushies which I think look cute, and in terms of web blasters, Hasbro went overboard, releasing the ridiculous Ultimate Web Blaster, which featured 6 different options. It basically looks like a web Gatling gun. I don't think it's that bad of an idea, but it definitely feels like overcomplicating what should be a simple toy. What I really like is the Venom mask and wrist blaster set, which gives you a Venom version of the Web Blaster, which hilariously looks like a little Venom head. Before we conclude the section, I have to mention the Burger King Happy Meal toys for Spider-Man 3. I don't really care to talk about Happy Meal toys usually, but I really love this line. They're like the Funko Pops before Funko Pops. I had this Spider-Man with the removable mask. Look at this detailed Tobey Maguire head on a little body. It's so funny. And I also had the Venom that could open his mouth. A great fidget toy before they made fidget toys. Geez, you can really tell by the length of this section how hard they push Spider-Man 3 toys and marketing. And I feel like I probably still missed a few cool things. Spider-Man 3, without a doubt, is the red-headed stepchild of the trilogy, but my god, I'm a loving stepfather. Come here, son. Give your old man a hug. The first Fantastic Four movie was a boatload of fun for me as a kid, and to be honest, I also enjoyed its sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer, which I think is a terrible subtitle, by the way, way too wordy. While I think the first Fantastic Four movie is way more solid, Rise of the Silver Surfer is a lot of fun and somehow tries to be more serious while also being incredibly goofy. I really like the Silver Surfer. This movie is how I learned about the character, and I just think a silver dude on a surfboard is neat, especially the scene where Johnny chases the surfer through New York. The CGI for the Silver Surfer is pretty impressive, man. I think it looks really good when he loses his board and sort of reverts to this living statue look. I think he's all CGI in every scene, but man, he looks lifelike. I also love that they brought Doctor Doom back for the sequel. I feel like it's not a proper Fantastic Four story if Doom isn't meddling in some way. And in this movie, he straight up steals the Silver Surfer's board and kills Sue Storm, though the surfer brings her back to life, of course. The choice to turn Galactus into a living storm monster proved to be a bad one.
People still complain about this version of the character to this day, and yeah, I don't really like it either. And I think the way the movie was written is also kind of an issue. Galactus is hyped up for most of the movie, and then shows up in the last 10 minutes only to be immediately destroyed by the Surfer, which is way worse than his appearance to me. They were obviously trying to tell the Surfer's story, which I think is a good idea, but they prioritized the Surfer over Galactus. We didn't really get anything from the character, not even a cool, foreboding voice when the storm arrived. I think the classic look they're going with in the new MCU movie is just the right choice. It may look a bit goofy, but comics are goofy, man. Learn to live a little. Unlike X-Men 3, Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer got a full-fledged toy line. These figures seem good to me. Battle Stretch Mr. Fantastic is a cool looking figure with long bendy arms that can look really dynamic. The Thing got a few figures. The Raging Thing seems to be the best one, though that blue pin in his arm stands out so much to me. Blast Off Human Torch has that classic translucent orange look, while Fire Blast Human Torch gives you normal Johnny with some flame effects pieces. The single carded version of Invisible Woman is fully visible, but Hasbro did make an invisible version for a 3-pack that also included the Thing and Johnny. Dr. Doom got 2 figures. Lightning Attack Dr. Doom resembles his look from the final act of the first movie, while Slash Attack Dr. Doom features his Roman armor look from the second movie. Strangely, this version of Doom has a dark purple chest, but in the movie his chest is all silver. The toy is probably based on concept art, but I kinda like the look of the toy better. The purple just pops and breaks up all the silver. Speaking of silver, we got 2 Silver Surfer toys. Though neither of their boards look that accurate, they look more like actual surfboards than the very simple silver board we see in the movie. There were also a couple figures based on the power shifting gimmick from the movie, where Johnny keeps switching powers with the others on accident, which is caused by exposure to the Silver Surfer's cosmic energy. Power shifting Human Torch has Thing arms and flame effects, and it's kinda lame looking. I don't like how he only has 2 powers, but power shifting Mr. Fantastic has a bendy Thing arm, flame effects, a bendy hammer arm, and an Invisible Woman shield, representing the whole team's powers, which is fun. And it almost feels like a reference to the Super Skrull from the comics. They also released a toy of the Fantasticar, which I thought was a really cool design as a kid. I love that it's Dodge branded. It literally makes no sense, but it's so funny to me, I don't even care. The toy is pretty much exactly what one could want. It is a vehicle that can fit all of the team and splits apart just like in the movie. This toy line is solid, and while I don't think it's as creative as the Toy Biz line for the first movie, I think it does a good job and gives you all the important characters in nicely posable forms. I was so hyped for X-Men Origins Wolverine as a kid. I was finally to the point where I understood when movies are coming out, and I was active online, so I was seeing leaks and stuff. In fact, I remember seeing the Deadpool movie design as a toy before actually seeing him in the movie, which is funny to think about because current Marvel movies are so guarded when it comes to spoilers, which I mean makes sense, but it's funny that Hasbro was just dropping a huge spoiler in the toy aisle. The movie was pretty hated at the time, and I think most people agree it's bad in present day, but as a kid I thought it was an awesome movie. I had read a comic called Wolverine the Origin as a kid and really liked it, so the movie taking influence from that book with the bone claws just seems so cool to me. I think the movie's biggest failure is the starting premise. While I liked the Origin comic book as a kid, I have to admit not knowing Logan's backstory is far more interesting than any story a writer seems to be able to conjure up. There's also a lot of inconsistencies, like why is Sabretooth a theater kid in this movie but a feral hog in the first X-Men movie? It also feels like they introduced so many new characters almost as a way to not explore Wolverine's character. It's a very surface level movie. Regardless, I still kind of like it. Not every movie is a work of art, and sometimes it's fine to just enjoy the ones that aren't, in my opinion. I think this is the first instance where I will say the toy line is much better than the movie to me though. I am a big fan of the 3 3/4 inch scale of toys. This is the scale of the G.I. Joe Real American Hero line, and at the time of X-Men Origins Wolverine, it was kind of the default size for Marvel toys, since Hasbro was going all in with their Marvel Universe line, a toy line I absolutely adore. This toy line introduced so many Marvel characters to me, and I always loved the presentation of the packaging. This was an excellent toy line, and I really want to go back and collect some of these figures as an adult. The X-Men Origins Wolverine toy line kind of served as an extension to the Marvel Universe line. There was even
in a comic book subline of figures that basically just functioned as an X-Men focused Marvel Universe wave. The movie figures are great, but despite the large cast, there were not many characters. The line had 3 different Wolverines, all in different outfits from the movie, and one of the figures has his bone claws. For this line, they made his claws one connected piece, which doesn't look great, but probably helped with the claws bending. There were only 2 other movie characters in the line, one of which being Sabretooth, who looks really accurate. Not my favorite Sabretooth look, but it seems like a good toy. There were 2 Walmart exclusive figures of Sabretooth and Wolverine that featured cloth good jackets, which is cool. I never knew these existed before researching. The last movie figure is of course Deadpool. This version of Deadpool got so much hate, understandably so. It's a complete rework of the Deadpool character, to the point where he shouldn't have even been called Deadpool. I can't lie though, I thought he was awesome as a kid and I really wanted this figure, which is a great looking toy. I think the arm bandages with the swords coming out look so sick, and I absolutely love that this toy was featured in the first Deadpool movie. I definitely laughed harder than most people in the theater when I saw that scene. What's crazy to me is that Hasbro barely made any of the movie characters, but made a bunch of the comic characters, including the super accurate Deadpool, which Hasbro probably made to make up for the movie Deadpool. I love this giant sai he comes with. It is just completely out of scale for some reason. There was also an incredible looking Gambit figure, as well as an Iceman made of translucent plastic, and Sabretooth, though again I don't love this look for him. My favorite Wolverine from the comic series is the Weapon X with Stasis Chamber. The chamber just looks like a really nice display piece to me. Overall, this is probably one of my favorite toy lines we've talked about because of the nostalgia I have for this time period. The Amazing Spider-Man was definitely a controversial movie when it came out. It was following up a beloved series of movies, and even though Spider-Man 3 was a disappointment, I don't think the public was ready to let Tobey go. Even I was a little hesitant, but generally I'm open to change and new ideas when it comes to movies, and by the time the movie was coming out, I was very excited, especially for the Lizard, as he is one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. I think the idea of a scientist that wants to regrow limbs like a lizard regrows its tail is such an evergreen idea for a character. I also like that the Lizard is similar to his original comic book version. A lot of Lizard stories have him being fully feral, but I really like when he becomes kind of a mad scientist that wants to turn people into lizards, which is exactly what the plot of the movie is. The high school fight between Spidey and the Lizard is one of my favorite live-action Spider-Man fights, especially when Lizard starts mixing chemicals in the science classroom. Such a quick and cool character moment. I did have to warm up to Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker. He's an interesting adaptation because they wrote him more as an outcast, hipster skater kid rather than the traditional nerd. So he's got a whole different vibe than the usually meek Peter Parker. And while he's not my favorite Spider-Man, I have really grown to appreciate this version of the character, especially after No Way Home. It's strange, it feels like they really tried to go the comic accurate route. Spider-Man is more quippy, he builds his web shooters, he falls in love with Gwen Stacy, all the classic hits, but they opted to make a Spider-Man costume that is completely different. I personally like it, especially the yellow lenses for the eyes, but it just seems strange. I can only assume they wanted a new look to avoid any confusion with the first trilogy. As for toys, Hasbro handled the line and separated the action figures into movie and comic book lines. The movie line is understandably small in scope, with only Spider-Man and Lizard getting figures. Most of the toy line is 3 3/4 inch scaled, but a few of the movie figures were Walmart exclusive 6-inch scaled toys, like Whipping Web line Spider-Man, which looks fantastic, with all the articulation one would expect for a Marvel Legends figure. And there was also interchangeable head Spider-Man, which came with a swappable Andrew Garfield face, as well as a backpack and little skateboard. Lizard also got a Marvel Legends scaled figure. I know a lot of people don't like his look, and it's not personally my favorite, but I still think he looks pretty cool. This figure's neck looks almost too long though. It's long in the movie, but on this toy it just looks off. I love that this Lizard toy comes with a bunch of little lizard friends. The only other movie figures were in the small 3 3/4 inch scale. Lizard has a giant rocket launcher and limited articulation, but Spider-Man is ultra posable, so it essentially worked just like a Marvel Universe
Universe figure. The rest of the line is called the Comic Series, and features a bunch of different Spider-Mans in different costumes. Some are from the comics, some just made up for the toy line. There was one 6-inch figure in the comics line, Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, which is based on Miles Morales' original costume. Miles first appeared in comics in 2011, so this might be the first action figure of Miles since the toy line only came out a year later. The rest of the figures are smaller and have limited articulation and gimmicky accessories. Grappling Hook Spider-Man seems to be based on the Mangaverse Spider-Man, which is kind of a deeper cut, so I respect the toy line for that. The Symbiote Strike Spider-Man has an amazing looking blue wash. I really love the look of this figure. And there's a Venom with a very similar look. I like the big Venom hand accessory he comes with as well. Doc Ock and Green Goblin also got very comic-inspired figures. There are also a few figures under the Concept series, which features the Amazing Spider-Man costume but modified, like Missile Attack Spider-Man, who seems to have his own Goblin glider. Not super interesting figures, just Spider-Man in different color palettes. The weirdest toys in this line are the Flip and Attack line, which are essentially Transformers that are not Transformers. They use the exact same transforming gimmick as the Transformers Generation 1 Jump Starters, which are Transformers that have a pullback motor, and when you pull them back they drive forward and auto-transform into robot mode. And Hasbro randomly remade those, but this time it's Spider-Man. I don't know what they were smoking when they thought of Cyber Lizard, but I need some. The Mega Web Blaster for this line is much more low-key than the weapon of mass destruction they were selling for Spider-Man 3. They also give you a glove, which is pretty cool, and adds to the role-playing aspect. Overall, The Amazing Spider-Man is a pretty good movie with like a fine toy line. It's definitely more of a low-key endeavor than any of the Raimi movie toy lines. I can safely say The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the only Spider-Man movie I had no excitement for. You could just tell from the trailer and the general conversation online that this movie wasn't going to get the good grace the first movie got. People really did not like Jamie Foxx's blue Electro look, and while his look is based on the Ultimate Electro, a character I do like, it just didn't translate that well into live action, even though they really tried to make it work. And there are details I enjoy, like how it looks like there's a storm going on under his skin. The Green Goblin storyline was so incredibly half-assed. Dane DeHaan is a great actor, and I do think he could have been a compelling version of Harry if he had more time and a better story. I like the look of Gobby's suit and glider, but the makeup they gave him is just a little too wild. I get the vibe, I just don't like it. And the death of Gwen Stacy felt just as rushed to me. Like, the scene itself is really good, and Andrew's acting really sells the tragedy, but the build-up just wasn't there. And the Green Goblin feels more like a plot device than a true villain. The one major prop I have to give this movie though is that Spider-Man's costume is absolutely awesome. Andrew being so thin, and the mask's huge eyes give me crazy Ultimate Spider-Man vibes, which you already know I love. I don't think the movie even passed the vibe check with Hasbro, because this toy line is much worse than the first movies. The basic selection of figures was called the Spider Strike line, and primarily featured ugly repaints of Spider-Man with silly accessories, and even less articulation than the last movie's very basic figures. Electro and Green Goblin got one toy each. Power Charged Electro's face actually looks nothing like Jamie Foxx, it's crazy. He has a light up gimmick, which is fine I guess. Air Raid Green Goblin is painted like a Happy Meal toy. Again, the head sculpt barely looks like Dane DeHaan, and while his teeth were yellow in the movie, the toy looks like he spray painted his own mouth. I feel like comparing this Goblin to Toy Biz's Green Goblin from the first Raimi movie says a lot about how the toy industry changed over 12 years. Amazing Spider-Man 2 did surprisingly get two Marvel Legends figures, Electro and Spidey, in the Ultimate Green Goblin Build-A-Figure series. Spider-Man looks cool, though something about him just feels a bit off. It might be the head, but I'm not really sure. Electro still doesn't look like Jamie Foxx to me, and the look of him really doesn't match the movie either, so I'm assuming this toy is based on concept art. The Web Blaster for this line is really funny to me. It's pretty much your standard Web Blaster, but it has this crank on the side. When you turn the crank, the blaster is supposed to shoot the web in a spiral pattern, though it doesn't seem to work that well. I don't know, the idea of Spider-Man using a crank-operated Web Blaster just tickles me. Like, that's the type of Web Blaster someone like Spider-Man Noir would use. This movie tried really hard and failed even harder to set up the Sinister Six movie, and I have no idea why, but even after the failure of Amazing Spider-Man 2, Sony Sony tried to build up to the Sinister Six again with those terrible Spider-Man villain movies like Morbius and Kraven. It's truly a bizarre timeline we live in, where Sony is dropping masterpieces like Into the Spider-Verse while also giving us Madam Web. I really could not make this video without mentioning No Way Home, an incredibly meta movie where the MCU's Spider-Man must contend with the villains from previous universes and team up with the previous Spider-Men. I have to give Marvel Studios credit, they adamantly denied that Tobey and Andrew were in the movie through numerous leaks, and even though I was 99% sure they were in the movie before I went to see it, it was still an amazing movie theater moment when Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire walked through those portals. The movie took great care to write all of these characters accurately, and I think they did an absolutely incredible job of repairing the legacy of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. The second movie ended on a very sour note, and No Way Home actually uses that as a storytelling device. While Tobey's Spider-Man is the down on his luck but optimistic Peter we knew from the Raimi movies, Andrew's Spidey seems almost broken. He's always been awkward, but it seems like he doesn't even know how to interact with other people now. He's completely out of balance when we first meet him. And by the time the movie ends, especially after saving MJ, I do feel like the Amazing Spider-Man is cured as much as the villains are, which is just incredible given everything else this movie is juggling. While I love the film, I do have some apprehensions. MCU Spider-Man has now faced off against some of his greatest villains, but they weren't his villains, and they all disappear at the end, which I kinda hate because I would have loved the new and improved Electro to stay in the MCU like he wanted to. I also have to question how the movie will age, or what a kid watching it with no prior context of the other movies thinks about it. I guess that's a question for time to tell, but for me personally, someone who did grow up with these movies and has all this nostalgic context, No Way Home was easily one of my favorite theater experiences ever. The crowd's energy combined with a movie basically designed to please fans of the past 20 years of Spider-Man made it a truly unique watch. We of course live in the modern day, so along with No Way Home revitalizing these characters on film, they revitalized them in our toy collections with brand new figures of Raimi Spidey and the Amazing Spider-Man. Since Marvel kept their cards so close to their chest for No Way Home, the Marvel Legends line based on the movie is pretty lackluster and doesn't feature any multiversal characters. Though there is a figure for the MCU version of J. Jonah Jameson, who is played by the same actor as the Raimi version, J.K. Simmons. I love how they gave him an alternate yelling head, very lore accurate. The first spoilery set of toys they put out for the movie was a 3-pack of the Spider-Men, each coming with alternate hands and web lines. It was so crazy seeing a toy of the Raimi Spider-Man suit as a modern day Marvel Legends figure, and the new Amazing Spider-Man is a much needed upgrade to the one from 2014. Later, a whole wave of figures was announced, including all the villains and re-releases of the Spider-Men with alternate maskless heads. Interestingly, the packaging for Andrew Garfield's figure is marked as The Amazing Spider-Man 2 instead of No Way Home. I'm not 100% sure why, but after reading some Reddit comments, the theory seems to be that they didn't get the licensing rights for Andrew's likeness in No Way Home, so they used the rights from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 to release this figure as a loophole, since he wears the same costume in both movies. I have no idea how accurate that is, but it is pretty interesting a toy labeled The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was released 10 years after the movie came out. The same thing might have happened with this amazing Doc Ock figure, which is labeled as Spider-Man 2 Doc Ock, though he's clearly wearing his No Way Home outfit. This toy is essentially the ultimate version of the Toy Biz bendable tentacles Doc Ock, with super long bendy tentacles that can physically lift Doc Ock's body into the air, which is incredible. The Green Goblin got a figure based on his No Way Home look. And don't get me wrong, his look in the movie is absolutely an upgrade from the 2002 movie. The purple being incorporated just gives the design a more well-rounded look, and I love that they gave him his hood and satchel, but I can't lie, I really want a version based on the first movie. The nostalgia is just hella strong, man. Sandman and Lizard also got figures. In the movie, Sandman is CGI the whole time. I don't really know why, but it definitely bothered me when I first watched the movie, and it still kind of bothers me, but less now. He comes with big
big alternate hands, and I like that he comes with pieces to make his wrists bigger so it looks like he's actually morphing his whole arm. Lizard is Lizard. He looks great, of course, but he very much is the same dude from The Amazing Spider-Man. Easily the most sideline villain of the movie to me. And finally, we have Electro, who got the biggest glow up, no longer being blue and getting a nifty new look. I'm glad they gave him a head with the electric mask piece over his face. It happens in the movie a bunch of times, though it only appears for a split second when he attacks. But it's such a cool way of incorporating his classic costume into his new look, though I wish they gave him a normal head as well, because again, 99% of the time on screen he did not have this mask. We also got new roleplay items of the Green Goblin's pumpkin bombs and mask. The mask looks so cool. I'm not a roleplay item guy, but I can hear this mask speaking to me through the screen to buy it. The last figure I wanted to talk about is potentially the most exciting, Spider-Man 3 Symbiote Spider-Man, complete with the Bully Maguire head sculpt. It looks great, and the packaging even references Hasbro's original Spider-Man 3 packaging, which as a toy history nerd makes me very happy. Now this is a very obvious repaint to do since the symbiote costume is just a recolor of Spidey's normal suit, but I feel like the possibility to go back and remake old Raimi and Amazing Universe characters has opened up with this release. I'd love to see the first Amazing Spider-Man suit, Amazing Green Goblin, Raimi Venom, and like I said earlier, the 2002 Green Goblin suit. Spider-Man continues to be my favorite superhero, and I can't wait to see what they do next. I'm expecting to see Tobey and Andrew show up in Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars, but past that, once the multiverse saga is over, I am really excited to see where the MCU Spider-Man falls in the universe. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Once again, thank you to GamerSupps for sponsoring this video. Use code dumbjake for 10% off your future orders. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you'd like to support me further, I have a YouTube membership and Patreon. For $1 a month, both platforms give you the same thing. Access to my private Discord server where we do monthly movie nights and weekly Toku nights, as well as weekly exclusive videos called Toy Dives where I talk about a random toy line. In the most recent episode, I talked about the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory toy line, which to be honest, I didn't even know existed. Alright, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.